So till now we successfully completed what is an API. So next step we are going to have is, why do we need API then? Why do we need API? This is a very most important. Understanding of what is an API is also important. Then after understanding the concept of API, so why do we need application? So why do we need API? Why? Why? So in older applications, or else in old applications, you can also write anything. In I can write directly as in old applications. Okay, in old applications. Okay, front end and back end are tightly coupled. Front end and back end were tightly coupled. So next, everything was being everything. Sorry, wait. Everything was in the same in one monolithic in the monolithic system. Okay, so fine. So what is meant by monolithic system and what is meant by microservices and all, we'll going to discuss in upcoming session. If I want to give some simple definition, I can give monolithic systems or monolithic applications or monolithic architecture is nothing but, I can tell you, whatever the project you are going to do, all the roles or modules, all every set of modules are going to be in a single project only. Okay. What if I say, let's take an example of learning management system or student management system or an ERP. Okay, in ERP we are going to have some separate roles. Okay, ed role, faculty role, student role. Let me take these three roles example as an example. If I want to create a project all with all these roles in only one project, okay, in only one project. If you are doing everything in one project, it is going to consider as a monolithic system. So if I don't want to create everything in an entire big project, I want to separate as per the roles. I want to create a project for the admin project, and I want to create a project for faculty project for faculty. I want to create a separate project as for the student. I'm going to create three different projects with three different roles. With this, you are going to have three projects, three different databases. So all these going to consider as a microservices. Okay, doing everything in one project consider as a monolithic system. And if you are dividing the projects into separate projects independently, those will be considered as a microservices. So this concept is going to be discussed in the upcoming session when we discuss about microservices concept. Okay, so next. So in older applications, what is happening? Front end and back end were tightly coupled. So tightly coupled and loosely coupled in the sense, what is meant by tightly coupled and loosely coupled? Tightly coupled is nothing but whenever you are changing any code, okay. So tightly coupled in the sense, like I can tell you directly, tightly coupled is nothing but whenever, whenever a developer want to change, let me take an example directly. So imagine you are having you are having an application with some modules. Okay, with some modules. I can tell you, wait. So imagine you are having, imagine you are having an application. Imagine you are having an application with some modules. So whenever a developer want to change any code in a particular file, code in any particular file, change the code in any file or in any module. I can any module. Those change that is going to apply for the entire modules, for the entire application. Those changes is going to affect the entire application or entire modules. I can tell you entire modules or applications. It is going, if this is the case, this is going to be considered as a tightly coupled. So what is meant by loosely coupled then? Loosely coupled then is nothing but I can just changing of one bit. So let me copy this tightly coupled. So let me change slightly to loosely coupled, loosely coupled and tightly coupled. So same, imagine you're having an application with some modules. So whenever a developer want to change the code in any one module or a module, that thing is not going to affect. This change is not going to affect the entire modules or applications. The change is going to applicable for that module only. If this is this, it is called as a loosely coupled. And if the change is going to apply for the other modules also, then it is going to call as a tightly coupled. So everything was in the monolithic system. I clearly explained what is meant by monolithic and microservices. So we are going to discuss those things in detail whenever we are going to discuss about microservices concept. Okay. So next. So this is the case in older applications. So this was the case in old applications. But now what we are going to have in real world, what the scene we are going to face. But now in current world, every application is going to have need some data. I can tell you, mobile app needs the mobile application or mobile apps needs data. Some third party or some web app also needs some data, needs data, or third party systems also need the data. Third party systems also need some data. So sorry, third party systems also need some data, also need data. Every application nowadays, whatever the things we are going to do, everything we should have some data. So for getting all these data and everything and all, we have and we create APIs for it. So we create APIs so that after create what is the benefit we are going to have after creating of the APIs and APIs and all. So let me write as a point in the down itself. So what if we create APIs? What is going to happen after creation of APIs? So that different clients can use the same backend, can use same backend, and communication happens in a structured way. Communication happens in a structured way. Okay. So whatever the thing and whatever the APIs we created, after creation of APIs, different clients are going to use the same backend and communication is going to happen in a structured and clear manner without any confusion. Okay. So, okay, fine. So in this we complete why do we need API? Okay. And till now we successfully learned what is an API and why do we need API. So the next we have is types of APIs we have. Types of APIs we have. So let me discuss types of APIs we have. Okay, what are the types of APIs we have? The types of APIs, and I can tell you there are mainly there are mainly sorry there are mainly two popular types of web APIs, two popular types of web APIs. Okay, the first type is we are going to learn is REST API, and the second one is SOAP API. I repeat, SOAP API, REST API and SOAP API. So let me explain the both clearly. So let's explain the both clearly. I can try it like this. Wait, I will explain the above one without writing that line. So no need of writing that line. So what REST API is going to happen? So REST API stands for REST API. So let me explain about first REST API. So in REST API, what is meant by REST then? Okay, what is meant by REST? REST stands for representational state transfer. Representational representational state transfer. So what is REST? REST stands for representational state transfer. So I can tell you, okay, I can give you some definition. If you don't understand the definition also, I will give some examples. Okay. Okay. So what's the definition I can tell you is architectural, it is architectural style used for designing the network applications, designing the network applications. Okay, so designing the network applications. If you haven't understand that point which I have written, so let me give you some real-time example. So example, I can give you some real-time example as whatever you purchase in Amazon, Flipkart, Nike, and Mintra. We are going to have so many online platforms for online purchasing and all for costumes or whatever the dress and fair we are going to purchase. So and when you search for a product, for let me take an example of Amazon. Amazon. Let me take an example of Amazon. So whenever you search for a product in Amazon, so when you search for a product, I can sell some product, whatever the product, I don't know, I'm just not maintain when mentioning the name of the product. It's just a product in Amazon. Whatever the product you are going to search in an Amazon, you are going to have some, for each and every product you are going to see, whenever you want all mobile phones without mentioning any name, then you are going to see some method you are going to use as slash products. I can, if you are not mentioning the product name you want, you're just mentioning as products, you are going to get all the different types of products. Okay, so I don't want like this. If I want the product, if I want the product with some particular id, some particular id, in the sense you can use product slash. So don't get panic and all by you by saying all this slash products and all. We are going to create, we are going to create some APIs like this in the next upcoming class. So don't get panic. Just an example, for example purpose only, I'm just writing these lines. Okay. So what if you want some product with some particular ID, you are going to write like product slash some ID 100 or 101. What if you want to post, what I think, if you are an admin of an Amazon, you are going to post about an order. Okay, post about an order. Okay. If you want to add some item into the Amazon, like this. Okay, or else if you want to fetch your orders, post slash orders. Next. Okay, if you are an admin of Amazon, you are going to get the total users and all, like user slash count, or seeing the count of the users, or deleting the cart. Okay, fine, deleting the cart, everything and all. So why I have written like this? What is the get slash products or get slash whatever all these things, these get, post, put, delete, or the HTTP methods we have. So what is meant by HTTP then? Everything is going to explain you clear in a clear way. So don't get panic. So just for understanding purpose only, I have written this example. In future upcoming classes, we are going to create or we are going to write APIs with our hands-on experience and all. Okay. I can tell you each URL which I have mentioned in the above represents a resource. Represents a resource. Represents a resource. Fine. So fine. So next, what is my REST? I clearly explained with an example. Fine. So next, what I'm going to discuss. So totally REST is going to work on REST. Let me write in capital letters. So REST works on totally. So REST works on totally. I mean, that is a point you directly. HTTP protocol. HTTP protocol. Some students may don't know about HTTP. What is meant by HTTP? What is meant by HTTP protocol? And what are the types we have in HTTP methods? I will explain it clearly. So what are the HTTP methods? What are the types we have? What are the types of methods we have in HTTP? We are going to have some get method, and we are going to have put method, and we are going to have some post method, and we are going to have some delete method. So these are the methods we have in HTTP method. Comes under HTTP methods. And what are the type of the response we are going to get by this? We are going to get our response in JSON format. What is JSON? JavaScript object notation. Okay, this is going to be discussed at the time of when we are discussing about front end in JavaScript. So JSON is nothing but you are going to get your output as a JSON format, mostly JSON. So JSON format mostly. Fine. So REST works on HTTP protocol. And what is meant by HTTP protocol then? And why we are going to use, everything is going to be explained very clearly. And what are the types of methods? What are the types of HTTP methods we have? The types of HTTP methods we are going to have is get, put, post, patch, delete, everything. So everything comes under HTTP methods only. And what are the return type of we are going to have in for HTTP methods in the sense we are going to get our entire response in the JSON format only mostly. So for first, let me explain. So we'll continue this about API, but let me explain you what is meant by protocol or what is meant by HTTP or HTTP. Some mostly you are going to some students are going to use as HTTPS also. So first, let me explain you what is HTTP. HTTP. So what is meant by HTTP in the sense full form of HTTP? So HTTP stands for HTTP stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Hypertext Transfer Protocol. Hypertext Transfer Protocol. So fine. What is like? I can also tell you what is written the full form of HTTP, but it is not the definition for HTTP. What's the definition of HTTP then? HTTP is a communication protocol. Is a communication protocol between okay, sorry. HTTP is a communication protocol which is used to transfer data between, used to transfer data between, used to transfer the data between, whatever can say, between with whom and whom we are going to transfer the data. Right? Let me write like this. Sorry. So what using with whom and whom we are going to transfer the data from whom to whom. So from client. So client is going to access your application using some browser. The browser kind Microsoft Edge or any Firefox or Google Chrome. It can be anything. Or if the user is using Postman, you can also mention Postman. Or if the user is using any mobile application to access your application, like anything. So the simple I can tell you, HTTP is a communication protocol used to transfer data between client and server. Client and server. So what is a client is nothing but some browser, and what is the server we are going to have here is in Java full stack we are going to have server. Java full stack we are going to use Spring Boot as a server, and in Menstack web development we are have Node.js and all etc. So Spring Boot, and I can give you some examples. I'm writing just examples for the servers, okay, etc. Okay, so whatever we are going to have, we are going to what HTTP is going to do. HTTP is a communication, it's a just communication protocol. It will transfer the our data between client to server. That's it. Okay, fine. Like I can tell you, HTTP is the language. In other words, I can tell you. In other words, HTTP is the language used by the browser, and server to talk each other. Okay. In other words, HTTP is the language used by the browser and server to talk each other. Okay. Fine. Next. So when we like, let me give you some examples. Okay. Let me give you some examples. So whenever let me open my Google Chrome first. So whenever I open Google Chrome, see here I'm going to see some nothing is going to be nothing going to see here. It is asking me to enter some URLs and all. So let me enter some URL as example.com. Okay, some example.com. Okay, example.com. It is saying that some example.com and this domain is the documentation examples without needing permissions about use in operations. I don't know what is example.com also. Just for example purpose only, just I have written here. So nothing is going to come. So what is happening? So here come back here. So let me take what if I when we type so when we type, let me copy this, come back here, copy this. When we type example.com in the Google Chrome, we are going to get HTTPS. So what is meant by HTTPS? I will explain you without this. We are in HTTP. So let me explain you HTTP first. After explaining HTTP, we'll get back to HTTPS. Okay. So what is going to happen here whenever we enter this URL, whenever we type this URL, what is going to happen? Browser sends browser sends an HTTP request to the server. I can also HTTP request to, I can also write like this. The browser sends an HTTP request to server and server sends an HTTP response. Request is being sent to the server and the server is going to send the HTTP response in back in return. Okay. So in I can tell you, let me take some backend context. Just I gave you some random example. I gave you now. So let me give you the same example, some backend context. Let me take an example of any university and all. Okay. So if I take any university example, which can relate to Spring Boot, I can tell you. Okay, when a user opens, okay, when a user opens some HTTP local host. For example, like what if I'm running my application in a local system, local host, and so with some port number of 8080, and I want to retrieve all the students data. What if I want all the students data? Okay. So I'm using protocol. What it is going to happen? Browser is going to send, browser is going to send the browser is going to send the request. Browser send, how it is going to send? Browser is going to send in the form of get request. And what's the get request we have? We have get request of slash students. Okay, slash students with the protocol of HTTP one-on-one. Okay, HTTP, some protocol we are going to have is 1 point any number. Okay, it can be number 1.1 and all. So the server, the browser send the request to server. Fine. What the server is going to do? The server is going to response with 200. What is meant by 200? 200 is nothing but success. Okay, I got the request. I have sent you the request, the response also. Please check in your system. So like this. Okay, fine. What is this 200 and what is meant by okay? And these are the success port numbers and the success message format. You are going to be seen. We are going to see these success port numbers and every success messages in upcoming class. So don't get panic about this. Okay. So HTTP works on HTTP works on request and response model. HTTP works on request and response model. But but what we are having some problems with HTTP. We are having some problems with HTTP because what are the problems we are having with HTTP? HTTP is not secure, and data is sent as a plain text. Data is going to sent as a like data is sent as a plain text, and hackers can read the username and password. What if I don't encrypt my password? What if I send my password? So example, let me tell you my password, ram at the rate 123. Imagine this is my password of any account, ram at the rate 123. So if this is my password, this password is sent as the same to the backend from to the front end. This password is going to send in the same text format only, in this plain text format only. So what hackers may do, hackers may simply access my password easily and they can hack my account. Okay. So let me write, hackers can read username, password, etc. Okay. What are the problems we have with HTTP? It's not secure and data is sent as a plain text and hackers are going to read my username and password, everything and all. If this is the case, my account is in danger. So these are the problems we have in HTTP. So to resolve these problems, we have concept of HTTPS. HTTPS. So what is meant by HTTPS? So what is HTTPS then? What is HTTPS? HTTPS stands for Hypertext Transfer Protocol Secure. Transfer secure. Protocol secure. Same as HTTP, but S got added at the end HTTP to the next of P, and S stands for secure. S stands for secure. So it is simply, I can tell you, HTTP plus SSL and TLS encryption. SSL and TLS encryption. This is going to be discussed in the under the course of network and network protocol security. In short, we can call it as NPS, and in some other universities, they are going to call it as a computer networks also. Okay. So what is meant by SSL, TLS encryption, and everything we'll discuss in the upcoming classes. Not needed for now. So what does HTTP do? What HTTPS is going to do is, so let me copy this here. What is HTTPS do? Okay, let me change. What does HTTPS do? HTTPS is not what it is going to do in the sense it is going to encrypt the data, encrypts the data, and what it is going to do protects the sensitive information. After encrypting the data, it is going to protect the sensitive information. Then it is going to prevent hacking and data stealing. It prevents hacking and data stealing. Okay, data stealing, and it prevents hacking from the hackers. So I can tell you all HTTP example. I can tell you, I will give you an example for the HTTP, and I will give you an example of HTTPS also. Example for HTTP for better understanding. Okay, so, sending sending a letter without envelope. Okay, sending a letter without envelope. Without envelope in the sense anyone can read this letter. Okay, if I don't seal this letter with an envelope, and anyone can read that envelope letter by opening the letter. What is an example for the HTTPS then? HTTPS. So let me complete this. Anyone can read this letter. Anyone can read it. So I don't want like this. What is going to do? Sending a letter inside a sealed envelope. So who can open this sealed envelope? The person you are going to whom you are going to send this letter, that person is going to open the sealed envelope after received by the post. Okay. Only receiver can open it. Only with this, only receiver can open it. Okay. This is the best example for the HTTP and HTTPS. Okay, this was the differences between HTTP and HTTPS. Okay, if any interviewer asks you a question just in one line, can you please explain me about HTTP and HTTPS? I can just give you one line answer for the interviews, one line answer for interviews. It will be useful for your interviews when you are being asked the question from NPS and all. So HTTP is a protocol. HTTP is a protocol used for communication between client and server. Client and server. Okay, we are telling him what is a HTTP. So HTTP is a protocol used for communication between client and server. Fine. So whereas HTTPS is the secure version of HTTP. Okay, secure version of HTTP that encrypts the data using SSL or TLS encryption. Okay, this can be useful for your interviews. If any interviewer or any client are going to ask you, can you please give me just one line answer for difference between HTTP and HTTPS? So as I can, HTTP is a protocol used for the communication between client and server, whereas HTTPS is a secure version of HTTP. So that encrypts the data using SSL and TLS. Fine. So if you want like some extra advanced answers for HTTPS and HTTP, we'll be discussing in the upcoming classes. Not get much more for this topic. Okay. So next, but HTTP is the better thing to learn. But if I discuss more on HTTP and HTTP, I'm just going beyond the full stack. I'm just entering into the networking course. So we'll discuss in next upcoming classes. Okay. So as for now, let me come back to my full stack course. So why HTTP? Why we discussed about HTTP? Because REST works on HTTP protocol. We successfully discussed what is meant by HTTP protocol. And under HTTP protocol, what are the methods we have? We have get method, put method, post method, and delete method. So what are the different types of methods we are having? I'm discussing in the next couple of minutes. So this is called as a REST API. Up to here, I successfully completed what is meant by REST. We already completed what is meant by API. Just now, I completed the discussion about REST. I just completed about REST. So let me discuss about SOAP API now. Let me discuss about SOAP API. So come back here, wait for the SOAP API. So why? What is meant by SOAP API now? So SOAP API in the sense, SOAP stands for simple simple object access protocol. Simple object simple object access protocol. So I can tell you why we are not using SOAP. Okay, SOAP is, I can tell you like here, SOAP is older version and it uses XML format, uses XML format, and I can also say it is more strict, and I can tell you it's more secure also. If it is an older version and it is an XML format and it's a more strict, and with all these followed by, it is more secure also, because this is going to be used widely in banking and telecom communication, used in banking applications, still using it used in banking and enterprise systems. Okay, still some people, some organizations are still using SOAP API. Depends on their purpose on use. Okay, but REST API is the advanced one. So what? Why we are not using SOAP? SOAP is the older one, and it uses XML format, and it is more strict, and it is more secure also. Okay, more secure. But SOAP uses only SOAP. I can tell you, SOAP uses XML only. SOAP uses only XML. And what next? I can tell you it is going to have some complex structure where beginners may confuse or beginners may have some confusion. Why much of configuration? Why this much of complex structure I'm learning? So they get confused. So all these things, keeping all these points in view, that we are having newer version. The newer version is called as REST API. So API is also better to use, but so it is going to have some complex structure, and it is an older version also. Okay, and it is also having some heavy message format. It is also having some heavy message format also. So keeping all these in mind, all these points in mind, we are having we have REST API introduced in upcoming and used in upcoming modern applications also. So I can tell you an example of whenever you are performing any transaction to any bank or to any clients or any persons, these they still those transactions still use this SOAP API only. Some let me give you an example right like this. Example, bank to bank, bank to bank secure transactions, bank to bank secure transaction systems still use SOAP API because it is more secure transactions. Okay. So I can tell you what is the difference. I can tell you REST versus SOAP. Okay, in simple answer I can tell you. In simple answer I can tell you REST versus SOAP. Okay, just in simple words. REST versus SOAP. Okay, I'm just giving as a points itself. So simple. REST is simple. and lightweight and mostly used for web and web and mobile application, mobile apps, web and mobile apps, and it works with mainly JSON and HTTP methods. Okay, REST is simple and lightweight, and it is mostly used for the web and mobile apps, and it works with mainly with JSON and HTTP methods. Where SOAP is going to work with, like, let me explain you what is meant by SOAP. Then SOAP, okay, SOAP is more complex and uses XML and sorry, okay, and used in high security, used in high security enterprise level systems, or any banking applications also. Enterprise systems like banking and telecom integrations. Okay, systems like banking, telecom integration. Sorry, telecom integrations. Simple. REST is so REST is simple and lightweight, mostly used for the web and mobile apps, and it works with mainly JSON and HTTP methods. And if REST is not secure, REST is also secure, but SOAP is also more secure. But SOAP is more complex to handle, and it uses only XML format, and it is also being used in high security enterprise applications like banking and telecom integrations also. So fine. But I can tell you, but I can tell you, as in one point, I can give you some clarification. In today's in present world, 90% of the modern applications are using 90% of modern applications are using REST API only. Applications are using REST API only. Okay. 90% of the modern applications. Some 10%, remaining 10% are using still SOAP. But upcoming some modern applications are being some using REST API only. So this is the concept. What is meant by REST and SOAP, and the differences between REST and SOAP. Okay. So that's why we are learning we are learning REST in Spring Boot. Okay, REST in Spring Boot. So why we are learning REST in Spring Boot, I will explain you now. So as for what we discussed, what is an API, we have successfully discussed, and with some basic real-time examples. And after learning what is an API, why do we need an API? With this, we completed why do we need API? After completion of why do we need API, I successfully discussed about the types of APIs we have, and I clearly discussed about REST API and HTTP protocol, HTTPS protocol, and differences between HTTP versus HTTPS with some basic examples. And later on, I discussed about SOAP API also, and we demonstrated between REST versus SOAP. And at the final touch point, I have closed with the types of APIs we have. And now, why we are learning this REST in Spring Boot? Okay, then what is Spring? Sorry. What is REST API? Okay, what is REST API? You know what is meant by REST. You know what is meant by API. So let us all combine REST plus API. You are going to get some combined word like REST API. You are going to get some combined word as REST API. So now combine API plus REST. You are going to get as REST API. REST API. So what is meant by REST API? REST API means an API. So let me write it. Sorry. So what is meant by REST API? REST API is nothing but an API that allows REST principles and works using HTTP protocol. Works using HTTP protocol. Fine. So what is meant by REST API? REST API is nothing but an API that allows REST principles and works using HTTP protocol. Okay. what it is going to do? It is going to use, it uses, it uses URLs to represent a resource, to represent a resource. Let me write as a points to avoid confusion. It uses URLs to represent a resource. Fine. As of now, it's very much clear. So it uses, again, it uses HTTP methods to perform operations. To perform operations. Transfers, and it also data. It's also transfers data mostly in JSON format. Mostly in JSON format. Okay. Whatever we clearly discussed about, we have successfully completed REST API also. So we just combined API plus REST. So what is meant by REST API combined word? REST API is nothing but it is an API that allows REST principles and works using HTTP protocol. Okay. It uses URLs to represent a resource and it uses HTTP methods to perform operations and transfer data mostly in JSON format. Okay. So now let me discuss have. Okay, let me discuss about HTTP methods we have. Okay, so what are the HTTP methods we have? HTTP methods in the sense, let me tell you what are the HTTP methods. I can tell you it's very much important to you must understand what are the types of HTTP methods, at which time we need to use, which type of method should be used. Okay, very much important. Why I'm writing in the sense, you listen from here very carefully. Important. Important. Fine. So what are the methods we have? Mainly we are have there are there are mainly there are mainly four important there are mainly four important HTTP methods. There are only four mainly there are mainly four important HTTP methods. So what are the types of methods we have? We are having get method, we are going to have post method, we are going to have put method. So what is meant by, some interviews are also going to ask you what is meant by put or patch. Some we are going to have some patch mapping also, but I will tell you what is meant by put and what is meant by patch. Well, I will explain you the differences between put and patch while implementation part. When we work on any project, I will explain you what is the difference between put and patch. Okay. So the next method we have is delete. Okay, delete. So let me explain you with the real-time example so that you will understand at which time we need to use which type of method should be used. Okay. So let me give you an example of student management system. Let me give you an example of student management system. Student management system. So what is happening with the student management system? So imagine, or else we have, or imagine you are building. Okay, nothing will happen. Imagine just we are building student management system, or else student system. I can write like student system and network is okay. I'm writing as in a shortcut. So imagine we are building student system. So whenever you want all the student details, you need to use get method. Okay. Then whenever you want the all student details, or whenever you want, or else whenever you get student details, you want all the student details, you need to use get method. So get method details, get student details. What it is going to, it is going to fetch all the student details and it is going to show you as your response. So what is a post then? How we are going to use post? So whenever you are building your student management system application, if you are using get method, it means it is going to get you all the student details. Okay. How if irrespective of the count, if you have 1 lakh students, you are going to get all those 1 lakh student details. It is going to this is going to happen when you are using get method. So what if we use post method, and when we need to use post method? If you want to add any new student, at the time of adding or inserting a record, you need to use post method. So when I need to use put or patch, okay, I will tell you difference between put and patch. Okay, for now I'm just removing patch. Okay, I'm just telling you with put only. Okay, later on I will tell you the difference between put versus patch. Well, we are working on the project. Okay, so what is patch is going to do? Patch is going to do update the student. Whenever you want to update any student, for example, you have inserted a record, you have inserted a student record with a wrong phone number, with a wrong contact number. Okay, if you want to update the record, you can go to the record and update the wrong phone number to correct phone number using put method or patch method. Okay, so fine. So what is a delete method is going to do? Delete mapping is going to do, it is going to remove the student or remove or delete the student. Remove or delete the student. So I can tell you these four operations together called as the above four operations together called as CRUD operations. Create, read, update, and delete. Create, read, update, and delete. Okay. What is create? I can tell you. Create is nothing but post. So create in the sense you are adding or creating or inserting. I will write here. Create or adding or creating or inserting anything. Anything comes under post only, right? Okay, adding or creating or inserting a new student, it is getting under create only. So create. What if you want to read? What read operation? Which read is going to come? Read is going to comes under get. So what? Why get? It is going to fetch you all the student details. You want to see all the student details, right? It means you want to read the details. So if you want to read the details, you need to use get method. So what if I want to update? Update for update we have put or patch. Put or patch. So what if you want delete? Direct delete. Delete. So this way, these are the four important methods we are going to use in our in writing or in writing it is in APIs, and these four methods are also going to be widely helps us to communicate with our applications. So why next? What next then? Why we are using Spring Boot for REST API? Okay, why we are using Spring Boot for REST API? Okay, why Spring Boot for REST API. So in earlier class, in the previous session, I clearly discussed the disadvantages we faced in Spring. Okay, at initial class I successfully discussed the disadvantages of the Spring framework. So how we overcome all these disadvantages using Spring Boot also discussed very clearly. So without any late, let me discuss you. So why Spring Boot for REST API then? So whatever you learned till now, just connect everything from back. Okay, so I'm just telling you whatever you learned up to here, just connect everything from here. Okay, now connect everything back. I can tell you now connect everything back. So whatever you learned from the beginning, just recall all the things. Okay, what are the disadvantages we have in Spring? So earlier in what we are going to do in earlier Spring framework, in early Spring framework, in earlier Spring framework, what we are going to have too much of XML configuration, too much of XML configuration, and dispatch servlet setup, dispatcher servlet setup. This setup is mostly used for the APIs when we are working on APIs in Spring framework. Okay, if I want to perform this REST API concept in Spring framework, it is going to have some lot of disadvantages while we are going to work with Spring framework. I'm just writing these disadvantages while we face in Spring framework. Okay, view resolver setup, and the last dependency we have is Tomcat configuration, because Tomcat should be added manually by us to the project by installing it and setting it completely. Tomcat configuration manually. Tomcat configuration manually. But in Spring Boot, I can tell you, but in Spring Boot, what we are going to have, but in Spring Boot, embedded servers are coming automatically. So we're going to have embedded servers automatically. By default, we are going to have Tomcat as the default server. And what next? We are going to have some auto configuration. We are going to have some auto configuration. Okay, auto configuration. So embedded server and auto configuration setup, and no, we don't need any no more XML is needed. No more XML is needed, and just we can use direct. We can use annotations, just annotations. Okay, and very fast development. Okay, so fine. So why we are going to do and what we are going to do, because why we are working Spring Boot for REST API, if you want to perform this REST API concept in Spring, you are going to have several disadvantages. So all these four disadvantages are covered in Spring Boot directly with the embedded server, auto configuration, no XML, and just annotations, and it comes under very fast development process. So till now, so up to here, I can tell you, I'm damn sure about every student can explain about what is, if any client or if any faculty or if any interviewer asks you what is meant by API and what are the types of APIs we have and why we are using REST API and why we are using SOAP API, what is the difference between SOAP and REST, everything in a clear way. So with this, I can tell you, we just completed the theoretical theoretical way for what is meant by API and why do we need an API and what the types of APIs we have and the differences between REST API and SOAP API and what is HTTP and what is HTTPS and what is the difference between HTTP and HTTPS. Everything explained in a clear way with real-time examples. Okay, so next with last we are closing with HTTP methods and why Spring Boot for REST API. If you want to work with REST API in the Spring, you are going to have some disadvantages and difficulties. So all these difficulties and disadvantages are being carried forward, and these are going to be solved by the Spring Boot directly by embedded servers and auto configuration, no XML, and just annotations on very fast development. So in the upcoming session, what we are going to do is what we have till successfully what we have learned in theory, we are going to transition the same into the practical concept. So whatever we learned till now, we are going to we transition the same we transition the same into practical implementation. Okay, so in tomorrow's class we'll see how to create our first Spring Boot project, and followed by we'll create Spring Boot REST controller, and every how to I will explain you how to write I will first explain how to create a Spring Boot project, followed by we'll create another Spring Boot project for REST APIs and all, how we are creating the REST APIs and how we are going to use each and every annotations and the differences between controller and REST controller. Everything is going to explain very clearly, and we are going to use some not random annotation. We're going to create we are going to create a controller class, and we are going to use all annotations that we require for performing this API concept. So just don't memorize the concept, just understand the concepts. Okay.